And we have returned. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio. Before you give this woman's quote, Christina Stewart, I want to give you a quote from William Pitt, Earl of Chapman. You mentioned the crises, and we have to do this. We have to do that. They create a crisis, and then we have to act. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. And I think that's what we're seeing with these crises that they keep creating and telling us we've got to act upon and spend trillions of dollars on and give up our liberties and give up this and give up our children, our firstborn and everyborn. It's like
no, that's an absolutely perfect quote. And I've said many times that throughout our history, human history, we've always had tyrants who have wanted to take control of the world,
Absolutely.
To rule the world. And what they've always done in the past is they have brought in armies, invading armies who kill people and break things and take control and subjugate people. But the question becomes, what if people with that mindset who want to rule the world came up with a plan that was so powerful they didn't have to fire a shot? They got the people they were going to subjugate to voluntarily help them do it. And what would that message be? And what they came up with was the threat of environmental Armageddon. It doesn't matter what rights you think you have if you don't have a planet to stand on. That is the very basis of the entire environmental movement, sustainable development movement we're facing here. And we've got people voluntarily giving up their liberties to do that. Why did they pick the environment? Because the environment does not recognize political boundaries. Rivers run through several states or cities. We have the corridors of where things grow or where animals move and so forth. And so this gives them the excuse, first of all, to eliminate our national boundaries, then our state boundaries, our county boundaries, and the boundary around your home. All of these become a target for them to say their emergency here is we've got to protect the environment so we can't worry about your yard. And this is how it comes right down to your backyard.
Absolutely. And this woman's quote, and she's the former Canadian Minister of the Environment, and her name is Christina Stewart. No matter if the science of global warming is all phony, climate change provides the greatest opportunity to bring about justice and equality in the world. There you go, justice and equality. One more time.
Isn't that amazing? Supposedly we're talking about the environment. We're talking about rivers and land and so forth. What does that have to do with justice and equality in the world? And then you go down to, the other thing I was saying, where they saying that, the Habitat One conference, and it's saying that concentration of wealth contributes to social injustice. And it's like the only way that we have ever had a solid means to eliminate poverty and build personal wealth is through private property ownership. That is the way the average individual who isn't, the Bill Gates of the world or, the other inventors that come up with some huge thing and become billionaires. But for the average person to build personal wealth, it is private property. And as we have begun to eliminate private property ownership, we have seen more poverty. We have seen the wealth of the country begin to diminish. That is the root of it all. And, they are absolutely determined to eliminate private property as a social injustice.
Absolutely, and that's what I was I don't have my quotes in front of me. I wished I had those. I should just keep everything in here because I'm always going after some of these things. But the Founding Fathers knew that, and they had certain things that they had said, and that's what we call them quotes. And they were talking about private property and poverty. It goes hand in hand. If you can't own property, you're going to have poverty. Now, of course, we'll always have poor with us. That's just, the nature of the beast, I guess, with mankind. But, it was so important to them to have property.
Absolutely. And you just take a look around the world. Now, the excuse that the environmentalists use to put sustainable development on us is that we have massive poverty in the world and it is degrading the environment. Well, of course, if you are horribly poor, you really aren't going to care whether what you're doing, you're going to cut a tree down, you're going to burn something, you're trying to survive, and that is true. However, the one nation that they have picked on to put all of this in is the United States. We've spent over $1 trillion in environmental cleanup, and if you listen to the Sierra Club, you would think we never spent a dime. But you have nations where you have teeming poverty, massive population, teeming poverty. Those are nations where private property is not allowed. It's the people who own the property, who have a stake in it, that will take care of it. That's what the ranchers, the farmers do. That's what we do with our own backyard, in our homes, in communities. And look at the areas of town that are government housing and where people don't have a stake in their housing at all. This is where you have the poverty growing up, you have the crime, you have other things happening there because they don't have a stake in it. And then they become prisoners of this, and they aren't able to get out. One of the things, I'll just give you a quick example on this. One of the things they do in the cities, you have all these planners and American Planning Association, so forth, working with city councils, county commissions, and they are mapping out the community of their new vision, smart growth they call it. And they come in, first of all, they'll go to the lower income neighborhoods, and they decide, we're going to tear all that down, and we're going to rebuild a beautiful new shining community in there. Well, in that community, there are people who own their own homes. There are people who have small mom-and-pop businesses. When the bulldozers come in, and nobody asked them, they come in and they bulldoze all that, they take out those homes, they take out those businesses. Now when they rebuild it, they have put something in there that these folks can't afford to be there. And if they have restaurants, if they have groceries and so forth, they're big corporations, not the little mom and pops that used to be there. What happens to those people? They are forced onto federal welfare programs and into federal housing. And their ability to have a life of their own, to make choices for themselves and live a life as they want to, is gone because there's no way out once you're trapped into that.
And you do a lot of helping with communities, going around and helping them figure out how to fight some of these non-governmental organizations. And that's exactly what we're fighting. I mean, when we talk about the deep state, we're talking about these bureaucrats, but also these folks with an outside agenda, the non-government organizations. They're wreaking havoc across this land, and they're bullies. And they really don't have authority, but they come in acting like they have authority. And you're helping communities fight that, aren't you?
What we're trying to do is teach them how to stand up to them and teach them how the structure is. These non-governmental organizations, I mentioned the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy,
Absolutely.
the ICLEI, the American Planning Association, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these organizations.
Oh, yeah.
They helped write Agenda 21 at the United Nations level. And they keep telling us that, well, this is just a suggestion, it's just voluntary. However, in 1993, Bill Clinton became president. Bill Clinton created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. On that council, the purpose of the council was to take the suggestions of Agenda 21 and make them federal policy. And that's what they did.
And that is a scary thought, and that has been happening across this nation, and it's wreaking havoc, and we've had many a farmer, rancher get in trouble because of those organizations. We're heading into another break. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio. This is Beth Ann. We're talking with Tom DeWeese. It's your property. Rule America, it's your property. It's your property. You're listening to CSC Talk Radio. We will be right back.